Natalie Portman, this is very exciting, The Black Swan, which has audiences and people going crazy here in Toronto. I just talked to Darren yesterday, and it was very, very funny. You know, I was so surprised. As long as I've kind of known him, I'm a huge fan of his films. He has such a thick New York accent. I was like,
That's funny.
I had no idea.
I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah. I was like,
of all
what?
things to be surprised.
He was just like, yeah, and my sister, and he talks like a longshoreman almost.
Yeah.
I couldn't quite believe it. For some reason, I had this image of him, but interestingly enough, he talked about one of the things that we talked about was your kind of preparation for this film, and how in his struggle to get this made, with financing, you know, being what it is today, like he had a little bit of time initially getting it, and you were like 3 more months, more prep, and it's such an athletic performance for you in this film. Obviously, you're dancing in all the scenes and emotional performance as well. How did you do that prep? I mean, what was that period to get you to play Nina?
It was a little bit like when you're learning how to swim and you're like underwater and your dad's like walking back, you know, and you're like, I can't, I need to keep going. It was like that because of the financing kept getting pushed back. So it ended up being, I did a full year before the film of prep. It started out with like a couple hours a day of ballet, and then about 6 months before we started like 5 hours a day of sort of cross-training with swimming and toning, and then continuing with the ballet. And then about 2 months before it turned into like 8 hours a day, because then we added the choreography on top of it. So we had like 10 different sort of big pieces to learn. So it was very extreme physically, and then also, I mean, then there's so much to read with all these ballerina sort of biographies, autobiographies, and talking to people about that world.
Did any one ballerina inspire you?
I definitely, Suzanne Farrell's book and Tony Bentley's book and Allegra Kent. I mean, these were all things that were very influential because it's really, even though it's not called New York City Ballet, I think it's so inspired by that.
I'm sure you're at Lincoln Center. I know you guys shot it was SUNY Purchase or whatever the actual physical, but it's definitely identified with New York.
And that particular company is so sort of like deifies Balanchine that it gave a really religious nature to sort of my view on that world, and I think that was really, really sort of the core of the character. Was almost, religious devotion.
Right. Well, you as an actress, you were completely transformed. I mean,
thanks. Having
watched you and pretty much probably seen every one of your movies, it was incredible to see that first scene. It's just like bone, and you're doing those the pliés in that living room with the mirrors again and again and again and again. I was like, oh my God. How is that to maintain? Is there any trick or something that you get yourself up for that to maintain the physicalness of that performance and also the emotionalness? Because emotionalness, is that even a word? I work at Vanity Fair. You went to Harvard. Is that a word?
Emotionality?
Emotionality. What is it? Were you just doing a crossword? Yeah. I don't know. the
I
level.
I understand. It doesn't matter.
But I'm just trying to think of how I can word this. The emotional intensity of the character of Nina, who it's such precision and focus like the performance.
Yeah.
It's like such a cliche, but to prepare for that, do you know all the lines before? How do you get in that rhythm so they don't distract from each other?
I think that actually the physical discipline that was necessary just to learn all the dance was actually really helpful to be that disciplined for the role, because it required that total focus. I mean, we shot this on a low budget. It's relatively high budget because it's so many effects. The actual money that we spent on the filming was nothing. So we had a very short schedule, very long days, and every scene's important. So it's like just one after the other. We would be shooting like 4 pages a day, doing like 15, 16-hour days. And so, and it was like very physical, and I had to work out before and after work too. So it was like just that extreme focus that the physicality demanded, I think really helped a lot with like bleeding into the focus that for the character emotionally as well.
Mm-hmm. And how was it to work with Darren?
Darren's absolutely amazing. He's very collaborative and very open, and one of the things that really helped me was, I mean, he would always have good ideas in directing me, but then would always at the end be like, now do what you want, do one for yourself, which sort of plays into the character too, that like she finds her artistry by finally stopping trying to please other people and trying to find pleasure herself. And it really was like sort of just opened up a whole new thing for me, and it was great. And he's as like military as I am. Like we both like order, discipline, obedience. Like we're very like kind of military when we work. That's so funny. It was nice.
Do you have a favorite film of his other than yours? I assume Black Swan.
I mean, I think The Wrestler probably was my favorite of his. It's fun to see how he moves from one thing to the other, because he definitely has this sort of, like when you see like a Picasso make,
the blue period, or
or like 100 Harlequins or whatever, and then like, but there's variations and themes, and it evolves. It's not like doing the same thing. I think he's really building a body of work that's similar, that he's doing sort of meditations and on a theme that is growing and changing and becoming something different.
Right, and he said that he viewed Black Swan as kind of a companion piece in his mind to The Wrestler, and it was so interesting talking about how he came to it when he went to the ballet, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna have one actress do both the Black and the White Swan. And,
right.
And you'd been involved in this obviously for a long time, right? I mean, other than the year prepping, wasn't it something you talked about?
Yeah, we talked about like 8 years ago when I was still in school. We talked about it, and independent financing.
Amazing. And how did he manage to get one of the hottest sex scenes in at least in Toronto in a ballet? I was like, in a ballet film.
Hottest sex scene in Toronto doesn't sound like a very good endorsement.
I was trying to be polite, but it is one of the hottest scenes that I've seen in a long time. So I was like, wow, I love Darren for that, which is you and Mila Kunis, obviously, a little two ballerinas kind of going at it. But it was, what was great for me is watching it is I couldn't figure out, I was so in it with you. Like I think the audience is so in your, so vested in you. I was having a hard time myself telling what the difference was, and I was trying to get Darren to tell me. I was like, "No, was that?" And he's like, "I'm not going to tell you."
Exactly.
But it is that part where you really kind of didn't know what happened and what wasn't happening. And
yeah, I mean, the way Darren started talking to me about it, and he mentioned it in our first meeting when I was like 21 or something, saying, she's going to have a sex scene with herself, and that it's sort of this, he presented the whole thing as sort of an exploration of the ego, and like what happens when you have this ego but you don't have clear boundaries in your own identity, and you start projecting yourself, and you're used to seeing yourself from without, like you're pleasing so much that you're always looking at yourself through other people's eyes, so that you eventually start seeing yourself everywhere, and you start making those boundaries fuzzy between you and yourself. And so you're attracted to yourself, but you're also threatened by yourself. Like you're afraid that other people are you, that they can replace you, but you're also totally sort of turned on by yourself because of this explosion of ego. So it was a really interesting thing psychologically to sort of think about, which made it seem less exploitative than I probably would have been if she was like, listen, there's like this hot lesbian love scene. Like I think that, I had an angle on it that made it an interesting thing for me to explore as an actress, rather than, fulfilling some male fantasy.
You accomplished it. It doesn't feel at all exploitative. You're just like kind of going on it. And I was really happy to see Barbara Hershey.
She's great.
That was such a great surprise. I mean, the whole dynamic in that apartment and that room, and just like living in there, it was just so effective.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
So how's it been? This premiered at Telluride? Is that where it went?
It premiered at Venice, and then it was in Telluride afterwards, and now it's here.
How's the ride been so far?
It's been fantastic. I mean, it's really exciting to see people reacting so strongly to the film, and it's also fun after you like work really hard in very difficult conditions with, you know, this sort of little army to get to celebrate together that it's over.
Now, how did you have such an appreciation for ballet now? I mean, I'm sure you took lessons when you were little. It seems like every little girl's in a chubby little leg and a pink tutu and stuff, but it's far cry from what you were doing in this film.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've always really loved dance. I think it's really helpful too as an actor to be aware of how you can express things with your physicality. I mean, not just the obvious, like your body moving, but you know, they specify the movement of your head and your eyes while you're dancing, and it's you know, conveying feelings and ideas and thoughts through movement is so interesting and so powerful too, because you know, words are approximations of what we feel. It's not I think there's so much more sort of pure, sort of intangible emotion that you can give when you're not relying on words.
Well, that was the crux, I think, of what Darren's doing, what's so successful about this, is because the whole meltdown that she's having in this character, or just the stress and the discipline. And Vincent Cassel's excellent as well. I'm talking to him later, but just pushing her. So we don't know the difference as an audience member. I don't know the difference in ballet when he's like, "You're not there. You're darker." It all has to be in your physical, what you're what you're physically doing across that stage.
Absolutely. I mean, the detail work. It did give me a whole new appreciation. I totally love ballet and all dance. I mean, I love contemporary dance as well. But it gave me an appreciation and a sort of sense of horror at the sort
what they
of,
do. How happy were you to have a pizza or a bagel? Or what was the first thing you ate? Because
it was like pasta. It was like all pasta. It was like pasta and bread. I was like a total carb fiend when I finished.
Yeah, because Darren said that basically you ate almonds, and what did you do to sustain? It's like a little bag of...
No, it's like I was eating constantly, but like the small portions of like but it's interesting because I started thinking of food just as my fuel. I was like, what will give me the most energy? I wasn't like, what's gonna, because you really you definitely need all of that going in, but you also need to be thin. It's really a big part. And also
it's so disturbing when you think about what the dancers actually do to get that look when they're being lifted like that. They are living on air almost. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, there are definitely a lot who are healthy. I don't want to generalize, but there's a lot of disorders, and that aesthetic, I'd always thought it came from just doing ballet, but like it doesn't. Like you can do ballet really intensely and not be that little frail thing. So it does take a lot of, and it's probably the only people who are professional athletes who, well, maybe wrestlers too, actually, who have to watch what they eat. Right. Like everyone else, it's like put in as much energy as you can.
NFL or marathon or anything. Yeah. How was you drop? You must have dropped like 2 sizes because you're tiny to begin with.
I'm small to begin with. Yeah.
Did you not get sick at all during that with that kind of exercise? Did you not?
No, I mean I had a nutritionist, and I had like a whole food scenario that I was, because I wish I could not eat sometimes, but I'm not that person.
Yeah. That's what happens. Are you going to continue to dance a little bit now that you have all that?
I'm done.
You're done.
I got my fill. I will dance like out with my friends at night at a party, but ballet is over for me. I'm retired from ballet.
After this, is there anything else you've got? Do you have any other projects that you're doing right now?
I've finished a few films that are coming out this year. It's untitled right now, but comedy that Ivan Reitman directed is coming out in January.
Oh, great.
And later in the year, I have Your Highness and Thor, which are coming out in the spring, which is fun.
Oh, that's right, with Chris Hemsworth and Thor, right? Oh, that's great.
It's great.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. This is great. I loved your movie.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
I think you were fabulous. Just a tour de force performance.
Thank you.
So it's great.